was an ugly little house. It really was an ugly house. And there really was an ugly energy in it. And you walked in and you immediately felt like, ew, this is creepy. This lady that was living there, her and her daughter was living there, they were of a Christian persuasion. I walked into this one bedroom. I remember walking in there and immediately, I started breathing hard and everything. This is strange. I felt this hand on my chest. It's like, oh my God, kind of pushes me just a little bit. I went back out into the living room where everybody was starting to congregate, and everybody said, "Wow, this is a really weird house." And I walk in and say, "Let's go. I don't want to do this. I really don't want to do this."
My best friend Kenny lived there.
How long did you live here?
12 years. It's a pretty cool little neighborhood to grow up in, He just farmed the whole area for years and years. And his wife died, and he just died. Then they started developing it. The city took it over after he died. And I don't know, I think he's been here for a long time. He's just a part of him. So we wanted to stay here.
Have never seen it. Wake up in the middle of the night and look out my kitchen window and hoping to find maybe him, but no, nothing.
All of us kids were just running around in the lake like we always do. It was late, it was pretty late, but it was pretty foggy out, and we were running up the lake there, right over there on the shore. And all of a sudden we saw this blue haze just floating across there. It scared us all. We froze in our tracks. Yeah, it scared us all. We didn't know what to do. We just kind of followed it and called it a day. Went home and told our parents we saw a ghost.
I began my work in ghost investigations back in 1973 when I had a first-hand experience in central Iowa. Somebody saw something. And that's very common in ghostly phenomena, haunts and what have you. Actually, in reality, seeing something is the least common. You'd be led to believe from motion pictures and stuff like that everybody sees ghosts. Well, you don't. It's very, very rare. Most people experience it through one of the other sensations, like smell, or they hear things, the creaking of the stairs and stuff like that. Water faucets turning on when there's, no plumbing hooked up or anything like that. In Alan's book, he has a number of tales that do have some merit. Where if you go back and check them out, my personal favorite is the incident at 20th and Washington, for instance. Stories just keep getting better and better. The more you tell a tale, sometimes the better the story gets. So it is kind of important to go back and see if there's any credibility to the story in the first place. This particular one does have a story behind it. Back in December of 1921, the fellow who was living at the corner of 20th and Washington, not the southeast corner, by the way, it's the northwest corner. It's that great big 3-story mansion that's sitting on the corner that really decorates up for Christmas. You ought to check it out sometime. The family that lived there was named Barstow, and Adrian Barstow was the eldest son, the unmarried rich bachelor that everybody was interested in. And Adrian had quite a reputation with the ladies. He was very, very well received, a prominent young man, just exactly the way that Alan reported it in his book. The night of the incident, Adrian pulled into his driveway, and the driveway's still there. He pulled into there after midnight. It was like about 12:15, getting close to 12:30 in the morning. So he pulls into the driveway and he gets out. of the car. And according to eyewitnesses, because this was on a weekend, everybody was awake. I mean, people were in the Barstow house. His sisters were in there playing chess and everything. And so there were a lot of people that actually heard the conversation that took place. But there was an altercation that was between Adrian standing in his car and somebody in the bushes that are right next to the driveway. Those are still there too, you can still see them. Something like, "Hey, you come out of there," that sort of thing. And right after that, 2 gunshots rang out. One went through Adrian's head and one went through his heart. And either one of them would have killed him, but it did indeed kill him right on the spot. Well, if human beings produce life, produce energy of some sort, then we are probably exuding this energy all over the place. And why can't it be somehow stored in certain locations? Temple Theater, beautifully haunted theater. I absolutely love it. It's not haunted because of ghosts. It's haunted because there's so much energy that's been pumped into that place over the years.
The very first time that I ever knew that there were ghosts in this theater was in the summer of 1974, and we were doing a production of Cohan is a Grand Old Name about George M. Cohan, and we were up in the costume shop. It was very late one night, about 3 or 3:30 in the morning. We had been working all night long, and all of a sudden over the monitor in the costume shop we heard the sound of tap dancing on stage here in Howell, and we looked at each other like, okay, we're hallucinating because we've been here too long. Between the costume shop and the Howell stage, and we kept hearing the tap dancing sound all the way down, and even after we turned the lights on, we still heard the tap dancing sound, but there was nobody there. We were doing a production of Dr. Faustus, and that's a story about where a man sells his soul to the devil in order to gain wealth and privilege. And one of our office assistants went upstairs to get something from me. I can't remember what I sent him up there for, but he started to turn the lights on, and all that would come on were the red, what we called hell lights. And they sort of had a life of their own because he had not turned on the control board. He hadn't gone into the booth at all. He was just trying to turn the overhead house lights on, the work lights. And those lights came on and off and flashed on and off. And that very same night, the stage manager went in to do light check, which is something we do before every performance, and there was no way to control those lights. They just did their own thing. They were bright red, and so even through the performance, the lights just did their own thing. Oh, there are all kinds of stories in the attic. That probably has more stories than any other place in the building. One of the more fun ones, though, is, I think it was the summer of 1997, roughly. We were doing a play called The Woman in Black, and it was about ghosts anyway. And the props master went up to the attic to find a doll because the woman in black lost a child, and that's why she was grief-stricken, and that's why she continued to haunt this area. And there were several different dolls up there, and the props master decided that none of them were really right, and so he took all the heads off of all the bodies and was trying to put the right head on the right body for what he thought he needed for the show. And then he hit noon or roughly thereabouts, and he decided he wanted to go to lunch, and he took the key, locked everything up, shut the lights off, left the dolls with the bodies and the heads disjointed, and went to lunch. And everybody swears nobody went up there, but when he got back up there about 1 o'clock or so, about an hour after he left it, all of the heads and all of the bodies were back on the original forms. In other words, the original heads went back to the original bodies. And everybody swears that they weren't up there, so it wasn't a practical joke.
In the Neihart complex, the Raymond Hall story, that's one that's not in Alan's book. That's actually very good. Back in 1987, when the university was installing cable outlets, during the summer of '87, they were putting the cable outlets in for the building, and everybody was gone. One of the cable installers was in the commons area up on, I think it was the second or third floor, I don't remember which one it is now, but he was doing the work in there, and he saw something out of the corner of his eye, and he turns his head to look, and there's a girl standing there looking at him. And then she disappears in front of him, freaks him out. He puts the equipment down. He goes running out the hallways, you know, screaming, arms flaying and everything. And of course, everybody's, wow, what's the matter? What's the matter? He refused to go back to work. He was not going to go in there and everything. And I had always wondered what had happened to him. I was giving one of these talks one time, and I was talking to a Rotary group, and there was some guy in the audience that came up afterwards, and he said, "You remember that story about the?" I said, yeah. And he said, "I was a supervisor on duty that day." He said, "That's exactly what happened." But in that particular case, you know, as the story goes, you know, there was stories of a girl that died back during the Second World War. It's unsure clear as to what it was that she died from. I've got 3 different accounts. But needless to say, something happened and she died. And they said that in her last days, you know, the one thing she liked to do was stand by the window and look out the window. And so people, after she had passed on and they would assign new students to go there, they'd say they'd wake up in the night and the curtains would be moving and they'd see the girl and it'd scare them and everything. And after so many students saying, I ain't gonna live here anymore, the university tears a wall out and turns these 2 different rooms into the commons area. Well, the stuff's still reported. I mean, still people talk about it.
I did hear the story that there was an individual from the cable company that would not return. So, but this was the window here that we had that was open on me, and then the building was empty, and I went down the end of the hall and came back, and the window was open again, and that's where I asked our spiritual friend just to leave the window closed.
There's one of the employees down there talks about how at the end of the day when they lock the money into the safe, you know, they just put all of the change and everything into the drawers, in the cash drawers, open it up the next day, you know, and these are the only people that can get into it. They open it up and all the coins have been neatly stacked up.
We always refer to her as a woman. When it first started, it was, I don't know, I guess I just thought that somehow the coins just kind of stacked that way. I didn't know. But it kept happening on a routine level, and so then I got kind of interested in it, and there was no explanation because they don't fall that way in the change drawer. They were in perfect stacks. They would be in level stacks. And she likes dimes the most, so if she only does one type of coin, she does dimes. She stacks dimes. If she does 2, she does dimes and pennies. Quarters usually is the last thing that if she does all 4, on a really good day she does all 4. She came, I think, once last week. I opened up the safe and pulled the money out, and it was all stacked in nice little stacks.
My first wife passed away, and I lost all my relatives, my father, my grandparents, and I needed an answer. So I decided I was going to start looking.
I'd come up here every night and I'd feed them and water them and take care of the dogs and everything else. And I'd be getting in my truck to leave just before sundown, and a woman would say, "David, don't go." And I'd look around, and there's nobody there. I'd get my truck and get the hell out.
For me, the most accurate gauge I use is sight and smell. And then you get a feeling. You can feel pressure changes. And after 8 years of doing this, when you're wandering around, if you are aware of yourself, you'll sense the pressure changes. Like you'll feel the tingling on your skin. You know, it's like, okay, I'm getting close to something. You can feel the energy.
Whenever I walk, if I walk into a place that's haunted and something's there in the room with me, I can sense it being there. I can't explain how I do it, I just know. And it happens almost everywhere I go.
Yeah.
I spent 13 years in the Army, and I was a Special Forces Ranger. And you learn to trust your feelings. And I think that's basically where I get the ability, just knowing that there's something there and I can't see it, but I know it's there. Yeah, this is an electromagnetic field tester. And what this does, measures energy in the air, is what we use it for. We'll walk through the house, we'll take electromagnetic field measurements, you know, and we'll note it down in a notebook or something, and we'll go through several times to make sure that we have the same readings, that nothing's changed. Then later on in the evening, we'll start going through the house again. And we'll get into a room where we'll find an entity is there, and the readings will go up. Normally, when we walk around the house, we have 0.3, 0.2. When an entity comes into the house or into the room, we'll get a 5.6. Sometimes we'll get 13.8, depending on how strong this entity is. This is our digital camera. It's no big deal. It comes with one of them 3-inch CDs, and we record everything on there. And when we get something that's worth keeping, we'll use the same disc at that location. You know, just keep it all documented on that one CD. This is ultraviolet light, but what we do is we'll set it into a hallway. And spirits, when they pass by it, they will have a tendency to glow, like crystal. Crystal reacts to ultraviolet light. And when a spirit passes close to this light, it would actually show the spirit, the ectoplasma or the orb or whatever, because it starts absorbing the ultraviolet light.
We have 2 wolves out there, and if something is around that isn't quite nice, they let you know real quick.
Cheyenne, I'll be petting her or something. She'll lay down next to me. I'll be petting her, and she'll jump up and she'll start baring her teeth and snarling at something. And Cherokee would jump up and she'd do the same thing. And I'd cross-reference where they're looking to see if I can see anything, and there's nothing there.
They're the best pet I've ever had in my life. The most loving, gentlest animals ever, and very protective of children, and very protective of me.
And every case is totally different. We had one in a trailer. The previous person that lived in the trailer died in it, drowned in the bathtub. And their daughter kept seeing a man in the tub. So we went out there and we got footage and we got interviews and figured out that the man in the tub was there because he wanted to do something, okay? That's why he kept showing himself to the little girl and bothering the parent. They kept seeing the shadow walking through the house. After about 3 weeks, she had, in her dreams, communicated that he did not kill himself. It had been ruled a suicide. He was overdosed on medicine.
Well, he came home one night, took his medication, and before he went to bed, he took a shower or a bath. And he took his medication again
Because
he forgot he took it, and he ended up drowning in the bathtub. Well, push come to shove, after all this time of checking his house and everything else, we ended up getting hold of the man's daughter, and we explained to her. She came to the trailer, and we explained to her that her father did not commit suicide. It was an accident. We explained to her how the accident occurred. And after we explained to her and everything else, and she told her dad, I understand, you know, it's all right, you know, you can go. And he left.
He needed to let his family know, let his daughter know that he did not take his own life. He loved her and he didn't want to leave her. And in completing that and letting her know that it was an accident, he felt free to go. You know, but up until that point, he was grounded. He had to find a way to get that information to her, and he finally found a way to do it through this family.
Our roommate's here. One of them's up here. I'm very familiar with the entities in the house. We have an understanding. You stay away from the boys, stay out of the room, don't let them see you. And if they do, you're out of here. That's the bottom line. You're gone. And we'll come home, and as you enter into the basement, they'll come and greet you at the door. Or when we go to bed, they'll come upstairs and wander around the house. lot of times, if it's late enough at night and we're up, they'll come up here anyway. And you'll be able to see them move around the room. You'll see a flashlight or a orb just shoot past you in the living room, or you'll see a shadow on the wall. They're not shy. We talk to them all the time. Say hi, good morning, see ya, keep an eye on the old dog. As long as you acknowledge them, they leave you alone.
There are many, many explanations as to what ghosts even are and everything, and everybody has their own ideas, their own concepts. I personally have the most agreement with what they call the energy trace theory, the idea that we as human beings producing energy, we are consciously or unconsciously causing places to become, what's the word I'm looking for, batteries, holding a little energy charge from all of the people that have gone into it. Places like even Memorial Stadium, on any football Saturday, there's tens of thousands of people in there, and they're all very highly charged. Everybody's pretty pumped up when these games are played. And that area that, the stadium itself is probably holding on to some of that energy. I mean, it's going somewhere. People like to be scared. They like to be scared in a controlled environment, like one of these scream in the dark haunted house things. They want to do this, but they want it in moderation. And once a year is fine around Halloween.
I've been working in haunted houses since I was probably about 9, 10 years old.
Everybody is a skeptic until they've run into one. And we've converted a lot of people just by taking them with it.
This is the best part about becoming the clown.
Yeah, the front area.
Just because it's haunted doesn't mean that it has to be a bad thing. That's Hollywood.
Hi, Mom, I'm home!
Most people that have ghostly encounters are amazed at how not scary it is.
Oh, ah!
And I remember this one little girl, she came up to me, her and her dad were there, and she wanted to tell me her story, and so I said, yeah, tell me. And she began to tell me about how her grandfather used to come to visit her, and play with her down in the playroom. Well, of course, this freaked everybody out because Grandpa had been dead for like 3 years. It's my grandfather, It's like, well, unless you're afraid of him, it's not going to be a problem.
Personally, I think that they stay around because they choose to. They ground themselves, the grip to stay alive that keeps them here.
What happens to when we die, I don't know. I can tell you what happens to the body, but as to what happens with the rest of it, I don't know. I mean, I really have no absolute guarantee that any of this means anything. And there could be that You know, the fundamentalists are right, you know, when you die, you're dead, and that's all there is to it. But I don't think so, because I've had so many experiences with things that are just on the other side of rational.
I think a lot of it, people kind of read into things, but there is times, like say, when you go around and you'll feel that there's something besides yourself here.
That energy continues to stay in the space for quite a long time.
I'm not real deep into that kind of thing, but I guess I don't have any other explanation for it, and so I just kind of assume that's what it is, and it doesn't bother me.
I have no fear of death. I'm not looking forward to it. I mean, I got a lot to do, but I'm not afraid of it because I know that's also part of the human condition. We will all experience it.
Somebody's going to come and get you, you know, a loved one or a grandparent or whatever. But, you know, even if you're all alone out in the middle of a field, you're not going to die alone. Somebody's going to be there with you. It's just a short period of time, considering that you have the rest of eternity.